Thanks for checking out this movie review video. So this is for the 1988 horror film Pledge Night. And for some reason on Shudder, this is available on Shudder when I'm doing this review, by the way. For some reason on Shudder it says 1990, so I don't know why there's a discrepancy. Internet Movie Database says 1988, which they're usually correct. So I don't know why Shudder says 1990, but this is put out by Vinegar Syndrome, so I'm glad I watched it. And the reason I mainly watched it initially is because it was asked of me by longtime subscriber Uncle Pete, who actually has his own YouTube channel, and I would encourage people to check it out. It is, if you just search your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, just search that, he'll be the first channel that actually shows up. So he does this thing called Nails in the Coffin, where he'll take typically slasher films, but he does some other ones, and he evaluates the kills. And each of those kills he'll give nail ratings, which it's like 1 to 4, and it kind of is based off of how good of a job did the person do trying to get away, even though they were killed. So I think it's 1 nail is they did a terrible job, and they definitely could have gotten away, and 4 is they kind of did everything they could, but they still ended up dying in the end. It's a lot of fun. He already has a bunch of videos up, so go check that out. And also, I'm going to ask a favor of Uncle Pete in return. Since I'm doing a review for this film, and I hated it. Not your fault. You did pre-warn me, Uncle Pete, that this would not be a good film. And it is not. But I'm glad I saw it. So do me a favor, and now you do a Nails in the Coffin video for Pledge Night. And then it can be kind of a companion piece for this review video. I think that's a good way to do it. Oh, and if I remember, I'll put a link in my description, if I remember, for Uncle Pete's channel. But if not, like I said, your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, just search that in YouTube. Very easy to find his channel. Anyway, this one is directed by Paul Ziller, who also did Breaking a Point. Okay, I think I put that in wrong, but Silent Cradle, lots of TV shows, mainly lots of TV shows, and it was usually just like one TV show for this show, one for this one for this one, a lot of that. So Paul Ziller, obviously Pledge Night wasn't a way for him to really go super far, but if you're continually directing, that's a pretty solid career in my opinion. This was written by Joyce Snyder, who also wrote Public Affairs, Raw Talent 2, and Raw Talent 3. I believe I had read that this is the only non-X-rated film that has been written by Joyce Snyder, so that gives you an idea of the writing pedigree there. And the character of young Sid in this film is played by Joey Belladonna. If people don't know who Joey Belladonna is, he's the lead singer of the band Anthrax, and there is some Anthrax music actually used in the film as well, which is the best part of the score in my opinion. Other than the Anthrax music, the other music is very kind of hokey late 80s, early 90s garbage music. It's fine for the time just because, you know, if you're into like that campy, crappy film, yeah. So I'm going to rate this movie actually in 2 ways, like as an actual like straight up film and as a so bad it's good film, because I kind of feel like the only way you can enjoy this is as a so bad it's good film because it's awful, which fits for being put out by Vinegar Syndrome because Vinegar Syndrome loves to grab those so bad they're good films. All the pranks and initiation events came from research that Snyder apparently did about fraternities, so there is like a real point here about how terrible fraternities can be. You know, obviously it doesn't pertain to every single fraternity out there, but there are definitely fraternities, have been and still are, ones that get caught up in these hazing issues, and it's not good. I will say, just to disclose it, I had experience with fraternity very briefly when I was in college. I didn't rush any fraternities. I didn't try to get into any. I didn't have interest. But I had friends who were rushing a fraternity, and I was hanging out with them. Therefore, I ended up hanging out with these frat guys a little bit, and they asked me to be in the fraternity because they liked me. And then once I joined them, just decided to, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Realized it's really not for me because they did want to participate in this hazing stuff. And when they told me I needed to do things, I said, no, I don't need to do this, and I'm not going to do it. So they then were just like, yeah, you know, you definitely don't need to. You don't need to. I was like, yes, I know I don't need to because you can't make me do this stuff. It's actually illegal. And then I was just like, you know what? It's not for me. So I was really only in the fraternity for about 2 weeks. And I'm like, see ya, not interested in this. This is not me. I thought those people were different. They were not. The film was submitted to the MPAA 5 times before it got the R rating. Now, I'm assuming the R rating is what we have on Shudder when I was watching it, because it looks like they're leading up to some good, gory, interesting kills at times, and we just didn't get that. Like, they lead you right up to the stuff, and you're just like, okay, let us see the payoff, and you just don't really get the payoff. You get it where they lead you right up to it, and then sometimes later you see the aftermath of what happened, but it's just not enough in my opinion. So I would be interested in the X-rated version. I'm assuming that there was more to it and it was a lot better kill-wise. They try to trick you immediately to thinking the killing is going to start, but it's a prank immediately with the guy who, is shaving in the bathroom and then he gets grabbed from behind and you're like, oh no, they're going to start the killing already. Nope, no they don't. It was a tease. But I get it. Like, they have to set the stage first for all the pranks that go on, how things have gone bad, how bad the hazing is, how bad the fraternity brothers are in this. Like, I get that, so that's fine. But I would argue that they take way too long to get to the actual horror aspect of it, because they do, like, it's important to establish the pranks and the hazing because of the whole story, obviously, but they do too much of it. It's like over explaining things in a film, and you get the point after one or two of those situations, and it's like, okay, we can move on, like, we're good. So it kind of seems like the script writing wasn't very good, and they just kind of stretch some things for the sake of a longer runtime, because it's basically like an hour and a half film. It feels a lot longer because of how bad the pacing is, so it is what it is. Not good. You get the feel for how the fraternity is from the start, which is obviously important to the story. So they did do a good job, like I was saying, of showing the hazing, of showing the pranks, and giving you the whole feel of how shady and terrible it is. And they set up the culture of, you don't go to the police, you don't report anything, you just deal with stuff because this is a fraternity and we just deal with everything within our group. They set Danny up as very over the top, going from 0 to 60 and stabbing someone over literally nothing. Now, it makes me wonder if at that point, because they don't specifically, address it, it makes me wonder if at that point he was already possessed by the spirit of Sid, who was the pledge who had died some years prior in one of the hazings. So I'm assuming that is the case, even though they don't specifically call it out, but it would make sense because of when he's at like the breakfast table and he starts like kind of like grimacing and looking like he's going through something. But they do set it up as like they were saying that he has a brain tumor, even though that's revealed later that that's kind of a lie. They just kind of tell that to the pledges to kind of scare them. So they do set him up for the audience initially, though, to be like, this guy's kind of unhinged. Maybe he's going to be the killer. And initially he is, until you find out, oh, he's possessed by Sid. So it's really Sid that's doing it. So it keeps you kind of in the dark as far as, is this going to be like a normal slasher film where it's an actual person doing it? Or is this going to be some sort of like, phantasmic thing? I don't know about you, but I would not eat at a place called Greasy Tony's. Greasy Tony's is not important to this film, obviously, but they go there and there's the sign for this restaurant, Greasy Tony's, and I was just like, that's the thing that occurred to me. I don't think I would ever go into a place called Greasy Tony's because that implies not good food to me, and it also implies that they're pretty proud of their disgusting greasy food. It's not my thing. The cherry race seems like a terrible time, but the corncob hazing portion seems even worse. Yes, picking a cherry up with your butt off a big block of ice seems terrible. A lot of bits getting frozen in that case. Also, then having to eat the cherries, that sounds terrible as well as very unhygienic, but it would not surprise me if that's actually something that happens in fraternities because they do some terrible things. And then the corncob thing, that seems realistic to me as well for what fraternities might do from what I know personally. Like I said, never went through anything like that, but I refuse to go through something kind of like, not specifically those things, but in the same vein of like doing terrible stuff. After a little of the hazing, I was ready for the film to move on. Yeah, you get the point. I was ready for the slashing to start. Like, I literally was sitting there just waiting. Like, come on, when are we going to get the horror element? When are we getting the slashing? I don't think I would have interest in even going near a couch in a room called the Boom Room. That's the scene where the two guys are going to get it on with the one girl, and they're on the couch. And yeah, it just popped in my head. I'm like, I wouldn't even go near that couch, because if it's in this place called the Boom Room, you know what it's for, you know what's going on there, and it doesn't seem like a clean frat house in the first place. I'm just gonna say that. I find the random yelling from the frat brother Danny with the tumor to be kind of funny. Those random moments of him doing that, but they do this to explain later why nobody would actually go in and investigate any screaming that would happen when someone's actually getting killed. That's kind of this convenience writing thing. It's just like, well, if we're shooting this whole thing in one building, which they do, we need to make sure that people can be killed without drawing everyone's attention, at least initially, so enough kills can happen before the jig is up, basically. So they take care of that by being like, oh, there's this guy who just always randomly screams. So later on, when people are hearing screaming, they're just like, oh, that's just Danny doing Danny things. But then there are other people screaming too, and you would know the difference between Danny's scream and other people's screams, especially because these are supposed to all be brothers and little sisters, as they call the women. Um, they would know the difference. So, I mean, it's not a smartly written film. The writing's terrible. Lenny does seem way too okay for her boyfriend having been stabbed the day prior. Yes, her boyfriend Rex, who gets stabbed in the back by Danny, who at that point, pretty sure he's already possessed by Sid. But yeah, next day, she's just like chipper as anything. It's like nothing ever happened. And then it looks like she's getting together with Bonner by the end of the film, too. So I guess Rex is totally forgotten about, because he survived. Let's not forget that. He went to the hospital. He survived. He was just stabbed in the back. It was nothing critical. I mean, he had been stabbed. So it looks like Lenny's just like, yeah, I'm cool with the fact that he got stabbed. It's whatever. It happens. And then she's trying to get with Bonner at the end of the film. And it's like, what happened to Rex here? Just poorly written characters. Poorly acted characters, too, for that matter. You can see that the butt that ended up being branded on this in this film was fake. You know, obviously they're not going to use a real butt for something like that, so that's fine that it's fake. Obviously it's good that it was fake, but you can really tell that it's fake. They needed to do a little bit more with the makeup aspect. And they finally get to the story of the actual pledge who died at about the 30-minute mark. Usually with films like this, you get that introduced very early with the backstory on someone died here in the past. Nope, takes them a long time for this one, which gives you the idea that you're going to have to wait a long time to get any sort of horror payoff in the film. And yes, that is the case, sadly. The frat brothers say that they went through the same hazing, which just shows their mindset that if they went through it, then others should have to go through it. It kind of points to the inability to be better people. Obviously, these are scum characters in this for the most part. You do feel for the pledges because they're just trying to gain acceptance. And they keep saying all the benefits of fraternities as they go through it, like, you know, all these people with these great jobs and these people who have been senators, you know, they've been in fraternities. So these pledges are just kind of chasing the promise of this can lead me somewhere in life. So you feel for them in a sense because they're being duped, whereas the actual established frat brothers, you don't really feel for them, and they're terrible characters. The toilet kill is very odd, and very odd. I was just very like, what is going on here? And then you don't even see the kill, like I've already said. Like, you don't really see the kills, which sucks. And so the aftermath of it is just like, okay, there's not really much impact to it. And then Danny stabs another frat brother. No big surprise with that one. Kind of saw that one coming, because if he's done it once and they didn't report it to police, or even seems like even talk to him about it, they were just like, oh, that's just Danny being Danny. You know, it's going to happen again, and it does happen again. The reveal of Danny being possessed by Sid falls very flat. It's this very kind of like offhand, like, I'm not Danny, I'm Sid. And you're just like, okay. It was just not revealed in an impactful manner, and that's what they needed to be working towards. I did like it when the guy said that the initials SID that were written in the one pledge who gets killed stood for Sigma Iota Delta, and then the other guy's like, "It's Sid, you idiot." That just serves to actually show like how conditioned these pledges' brains are becoming, where they're like everything is fraternity to them. Like they're so focused on fraternity because they're being hazed and being forced to focus so much on fraternity that when he sees SID, he doesn't just read it as Sid. It's like Sigma Iota Delta. So I did kind of like that aspect to it. That was actually kind of clever-ish writing. The knives popping through the front door in rapid succession around Bonner when he had his back to it looked really cool, but also I don't know how they pulled that off on set without it being kind of dangerous at least kind of dangerous, potentially very dangerous. But it looked great. I mean, visually it was awesome. It's just like all the way around his body. Very cool. I love when the sheriff asks the question, "Strangled how?" You really get the point from that line of dialogue that the sheriff has no intention of helping anyone out of this terrible situation at the frat house. And then he even goes even further to say, "Oh, I was a part of that fraternity," which I definitely saw that coming. And then he was just like, "It's frat stuff. We're not going to go see what's going on," which obviously he's a terrible sheriff. But I assumed that would be the case. I do like how they have Sid smoking at times. That kind of idea that, he died from acid, so like his skin, even in the afterlife, his skin is still smoldering basically. I did like that touch. That was a cool touch. And the fact that he uses the acid still on his skin and in his body at times. But I'll talk about one of those times in a bit. What? The line that Sid says, "That's for Spiro Agnew." What does this even mean? I know who Spiro Agnew was. What does it mean? Like, I assume I'm just missing something because this is from 1988 and I'm currently watching it in 2021. But, man, that is so random. I don't think I've ever heard the name Spiro Agnew used in a horror film in my life. So that's a first. That's an interesting first. But what does it even mean? It's But when that is said, actually, that's not a bad kill. That is one of the kills that you do actually see, and it's not bad. It's the one where he turns the guy's head 180 degrees, and you can tell that what they did is like they shot it from the front of him turning it like this far, and then they shot from the back of him with his clothes on backwards, turning his head like this, and then blood comes out. It didn't look bad, honestly. Like it was decent enough. So the acid kill with the guy's head being shoved inside of Sid's stomach, open stomach, was probably the most interesting kill and the most inspired kill in this film. I actually did enjoy that one. I was like, "Oh, this is different. I'm down with it." I haven't seen that before, so I dug it, definitely. One bright spot in this otherwise dull film. What a terrible resolution to the Sid issue. He says he came back to protect Bonner. So if he came back to protect Bonner, why was he trying to kill Bonner for quite some time? And I assume if he was actually coming back, he was coming back to save the pledges for being hazed, in which case, why did he kill the pledges? So what? Like this gets back to the whole thing of terrible writing. It's horrendously bad writing. And it's obvious that they didn't have like a real good ending for it, so they're just like, and then Sid goes away because Bonner says that he is himself instead of saying he's scum or a dirty pledge or whatever it was they were saying. It's kind of, I think it's supposed to get to this point of he gets out of like the fraternity mindset and realizes that he's like a normal person again. So then it's like Sid's like, "Oh, now I can rest." But obviously he ends up coming back. So they couldn't at least give us that final kill. They do the setup where the couple's having sex on this very abnormally high up bunk bed, which as soon as I saw it, I was like, what is with this? It's so weird. But obviously you see it's a convenience thing for the film so they can get Sid under it with enough space to actually be standing up. And he like primes it so that he was going to like, put a sword through him. And I was like, yes, this would be a great way to end it. And then he just like stops. And just credits. And I'm just like, what a terrible tease. What a terrible tease. None of the actors really did a good job selling the kills either. That was another big problem with this. Even, when the script is bad, when the film's bad, at least if the actors can kind of sell the kills, it helps. And they just did not sell the kills in this. So another reason the film just falls flat. Very poorly paced, like I already said. This does capture the issue of fraternities and their hazing, which I believe was the point of the entire script. It's a culture built on doing terrible things to people to make them earn their way into a brotherhood. It's sadistic. It really, really is. And they put it under the guise of, well, I should say, fraternities that act this way, that do hazing. Because, like I said, not all of them do, I'm sure. But the ones that do that, it's just a sadistic culture that's predicated on, finding enjoyment in doing hazing, and it's sick. And it's something that needs to be cracked down on. I know when it's found out, it does get cracked down on, but yeah, it's a thing that needs to go away for sure. I'm not even sure fraternities really serve much of a purpose. That's my personal opinion. You may feel differently, and that's fine. And you can tell me that in the comments, but, in a nice way. We can talk it over. So I'm going to rate this 2 ways. Like I said, out of 5 stars with half stars in play as like a straight up film. I'm going to give it 1 star. And I give it 1 star because directorially it didn't look that bad. And there were some good ideas here and there. But yeah, it just didn't really come together at all. So 1 star as an actual film. Out of 5 stars with half stars in play for a so bad it's good film, I give it 1.5. I can't even give it like a whole extra star because it's not even that fun. Like if there was more to the kills and you saw the kills, it would be different. Or if it was like funnier, at least unintentionally or intentionally funnier, it would be a lot better. But I can only give it 1.5 stars for a so bad it's good film, honestly. I will never watch this film again, but I'm glad I watched it once, especially because it's Vinegar Syndrome, and I'd love to support Vinegar Syndrome because they put a lot of cool stuff out there. Which I believe Hellmaster is one that they've put out. And if you haven't seen Hellmaster, definitely check that out. John Saxon, and that is a so bad it's good film. That one's really a good time. I have a review for it on my channel. You can check it out after you watch Hellmaster. I think it's still on Shudder. I think so. But it's a Vinegar Syndrome. I've thought about owning that, actually. Thought about purchasing it from them. But anyways, if you have watched Pledge Night and you want to talk about it, go ahead and put it in the comments. Love it, hate it, whatever. We can have a dialogue about this. Do me a quick favor, though. Hit subscribe. It is quick. It is painless. It costs you $0. And it is your way to repay me if you like this video or any video I've ever done. It literally does keep me motivated. And I appreciate that. But regardless, I do appreciate you taking your time to watch this video. And until next time, keep it brutal.